Hello everyone, welcome back. Uh, this lecture focuses on components and templates. Let's dive into this topic. So, as soon as you have seen the topic, you guys would have got confused. Like we already saw the components and templates, but those were just the basics of components and templates. There are more than just basics to these concepts. Since the components and templates are the building blocks of Angular, now we are going to cover everything in detail. I'm going to go with more details. So first topic I'm going to cover is attribute directives. In the last components video, we just saw ng module attribute directive that helped us to do two-way binding. In this lecture we are seeing two more directives. One is ng class and the another one is ng style. Ng class is allows you to add or remove classes. You can actually use a conditional operator and then add a specific class or remove it. So this is a really useful feature uh, in terms of styling. If you want to apply some um, style based on a condition, this will be a very useful attribute. Uh, so that's about ng class. The next attribute is ng style. ng style allows you to set many inline style dynamically. We have an example here which will give a good sense of what ng style is. So in ng style, we can define styles based on conditions, just like ng class. Here, based on these variable values, we can set the styles. We have a number of styles inside our object: font style, font weight, and font size. Uh, those values are assigned based on a specific variable value. So if this based on this value, it is set to either italic or normal, and based on this value, it is set either bold or normal, and based on this value, it is set either 24 pixels or 12 pixels. So, and then in the template, we are just using this object which will in turn refer to this variable and then have these values for these properties. So this is a really useful feature, since we can set different styles based on the values which we compute in the component class. So that's the other additional attribute directives along with ng model. Now let's go to structural directives. In the components lecture, I was talking about two of structural directives. One is ngif and another one is ngfor. Now we have ng switch as well. It's really amazing, right, to have ng switch in the template, that we can apply ng switch in the template. So ng switch, it can be done using three directives: ng switch case, and ng switch default. This is just like your normal switch case in JavaScript. The only thing is we have added ng to it. So ng switch will have the expression which will be evaluated. ng switch case is the cases to which we have to match the value, and ng default is the value. ng default is a case when nothing matches. So let's see the syntax of how we can implement ng switch in template. So we have to use ng switch as a property binding. ng switch is not a structural directive; it's an attribute directive, hence it does not have any asterisks with it. All structural directives will have an asterisk if you closely look at it. Like ngif and ngfor add an asterisk before it, which means it's a structural directive. Now ng switch is not a structural directive; it is an attribute directive. So based on this value, we have a number of components, different components, and we have a different cases. So these are the cases that we have in normal JavaScript. So here we have ng switch case to this value. So if the value of current item that feature matches this value, then this component will be displayed. And if it matches in the second value, the second component will be displayed. So it is based on which component it matches. And the last case is the one which does not match any case. So if it does not match any case, by default it will go to ng switch default. This template will be displayed. So in this way, you can either you can display a specific component based on the condition, based on the value of a specific variable. So this can be useful to change something like uh, different types of cars. I'm giving some examples like how you can use this G switch. So based on the value, you can just give a separate template for each one can have a specific car, and based on this value, you can just uh, display those components over there. So that's about structural directives. And the next one is template reference variable. Template reference variable is nothing but is also called as hash variable. It is used to reference to a specific DOM element in the template. The syntax is whichever element you want to refer in future, you just need to add hash and any variable name to it. So here it is an input tag which takes phone number. So I am adding a template reference variable hash phone. This will be useful when we come to the button. So we have a button which has a click event. So in click event, we are just directly getting the value of phone in the template itself. So since we named it phone, we gave a template reference variable phone. We can directly access the value of phone field over here, and we can call the event handler from here. So this is a very useful feature because we can instantly get the values of other fields, and we can call the corresponding events. It would have been a more tedious task if we didn't have this template reference variable. Hence, we can leverage this the template reference variable as much as we can in Angular for getting the value instantly. And then now we are going to a different sector of template features. For this, you need to understand the hierarchy of components. I just wanted to remind you guys that we can nest components. That is, you can display another component inside a component. So, for example, inside a parent component, you can just add another component. It's like a hierarchical display. So, with that in mind, let's start our journey towards input. The add input function allows data flow from parent component to child component. So these input and output variables are going to deal with data flow between the parent and the child component. When you're nesting components, there might be a lot of common features between the parent component and the child component, and there will be a need to transfer the data from each of these components. So in this case, in those situations, these input functions come handy to implement input data flow from parent to child. First, we have to in child component we have to import input, and then to whatever variable we are going to use, we have to add input function as a prefix. It means data is going to flow to this variable from the parent class. So we are adding this in the child class. Since the child class is going to get this value from the parent class. And then in child template, we are just displaying the item. We are just displaying like today's item, and we are displaying it. In parent template, in parent template, what we have to do is, since parent template will nest the child template, we have to use the selector of the child template, and then we have to use property binding to send the value from parent class to child class, and it is displayed in the child template. So the value of this current item is in the parent class, like current item is equal to television. So this value will go here, and it is binded to the child component item. So it will come to this child component, and then it will get displayed in the template. In this way, you can share data from parent class to child class. The next feature is output. The output is just the opposite direction flow of input. Uh, Output allows data flow from child component to parent component. For input, you got input from parent component to child component. Now we are getting uh, data flow from child component to parent component. So let's see how we can implement this. To do this, so we have to import output and event emitter in the child class, and then uh, here we'll be using event emitter object. Event emitter is nothing but a class that will allow you to emit events to the parent. So we are creating an event emitter of type string. It can be any type, not only just string. In this application, string is the proper use case, so we are using string. Excuse me. And then we are just adding the prefix at output. In that, we added at input. Now we are going to output from child class, so we are adding at output. And then we have a function called add new item. So add new item mm, is going to emit the value. So you will understand if I show you the template. In child template, so we have add an item, and then we have input item with the template reference variable. So on click, when you click the button, add item button, what it will do is it will get the new item value using the template reference variable, and then it will call the add new item function, which we saw in child class. So it will come add new item, and then the value of this new item will come over here, and then it will be emitted to parent class. In parent class, in parent template, we'll as usual we will be nesting the child component inside the parent component template. So the child component selector is app item output, so we are using the selector, and then we are doing here we have to do event binding. So the event name is new item event, which is of child element, which we saw, which is the so in if you go to input, if I show from input, then you will understand. In input, we used item variable as the as a variable where the data should flow from parent to child. So we used mm, property binding item, but here new item event is not uh, is not a variable but an event emitter, which is actually an event. So we cannot use property binding here. You can use event binding only here. So new item event is an event, so we are having event binding over here. And then once the data comes from child to parent, it is calling parent class method add item, and then it is passing the value for which it got from child event, child component, sorry, and that event will come over here as new item, and the parent class will just push in the number of items here, and it will be displayed in the parent class. So this is how output is executed. So I'll explain once more. So first we have to implement. So first we have to add output before an event emitter object. We can create any type, like event emitter is an object, but we can create any type of event emitter like integer, string, Now here we are creating string, and then in this function we are going to, whenever we get some value, we are going to emit it to parent class. Let's go to the child template. In template we have add an item, uh, and input field, and then based on an input we are getting those value, and then on click we are sending that to add new item. So it will come to the child class, and from child class it will emit. This is the event emitter. So if we can use the emit function, and then we can send the value to parent class. The parent class we have already mentioned, we have already nested the child event, and then in the event we have bound event, new item event here, and if we get that event, we have to add send it to add item, and the value will be passed to add item of parent class method. So let's come to the parent class add item method, and then here we are just pushing the value that we just received from the child component, and then we'll push the number of items. Finally, we'll display in the parent class template. So this is how you can just pass data from client to the from the child component to the parent component. This way, data flow can happen. This can be a useful feature as well. Like if based on the events in child component, something has to be updated in parent component, then it will be a very useful feature. That's it for now, but there are more to templates and components, because since they are the main blocks of Angular, there are more topics that I'll be covering under this domain in the future lectures. Please feel free to post your comments, and thank you. Stay safe.